Okay, guys, we are back with Macbeth. We're up to Act 2, Scene 3. Just a little recap, because I know it's been a while, and these will be coming a little bit more regularly. I was waiting for you to finish your term papers and the test, which hopefully you took today. Hopefully that went well. So, when the play started, Macbeth was not king. He was a thane, and he was very successful in a battle. If you remember, they were fighting the Irish, and then Norway jumped in, and he was the hero of the day, and he was given a promotion because one of the other thanes, the Thane of Cawdor, wound up being a traitor. The witches had prophesized that, and so when he got the Thane of Cawdor, they had also prophesied about him being king. He started thinking about that. The king comes to his home that evening, and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth actually plot and then carry out an execution of the king. That's what we did in the last scenes. If you remember, we had Macbeth while Lady Macbeth was in there getting the guards drunk, and then we had Lady Macbeth while Macbeth was in there killing the king, all right? So this next scene is that next morning. So Macbeth and Lady Macbeth had just recently gone off to bed. That had the scene with about the blood on the hands, and she was yelling at him that he was lost all his nerve, and he took the daggers from the scene, and he wouldn't go back there because he was afraid of the blood and all that. So that's what just happened. And if you remember, during that scene, I kept pointing out and banging on the table, there was this knocking at the door. So in Scene 3 in Act 2, it opens with a scene that's considered comic relief. I'm guessing most of you are familiar with that. But a comic relief scene is just that. It's a funny little scene, usually coming after a very tense, stressful scene. And that's exactly what we have here. This comic relief involves a porter, which is essentially like a gatekeeper. And he's stirred from his sleep by all the knocking, and he makes his way over to the gate. And he plays this little game as he's walking over to the gate, as if he was opening the gates of hell, if he was in charge of the gates of hell. And it's funny, he's playing these games, and he's kind of hungover and all that. An interesting idea that comes from it is he says, if I was working the gates of hell, I would be so busy. And the implication, obviously, his point is that there are many, many bad people in the world that would be going to hell, and the keeper of the gate of hell would be very busy. So he gets to the door, he opens it, and who's there but Macduff? This is going to be Macduff and Lennox. So what does that mean that they're there outside knocking on the gate that morning? That means they weren't at the feast the night before. Everyone else is kind of just sleeping all over the castle. If you remember going way back, I said Macduff probably had bad feelings about Macbeth from when Macbeth was the war hero, because Macbeth had to defend Macduff's territory, which was Fife. He's the Thane of Fife, all right? So he didn't go to the party, all right? But he's here on an errand, okay? So as these guys come in and the porter makes his way off, Macbeth comes down, like from his bedroom. He's like in his robe, like he was sleeping. And Macduff actually says, our knocking has awaked him, here he comes. And Lennox says, good morning, noble sir. And Macbeth, good morrow both. Macduff says, is the king stirring, worthy thane? Macbeth, not yet. He did command me to call timely on him. I have almost slipped the hour. I'll bring you to him. So Macduff is there on an errand appointed by the king. He's like, come and get me in the morning. Evidently, they had somewhere they had to go. You got to remember, Macbeth is talking about all this knowing the king is dead. So the next part, they're literally walking to the king's chambers, and Lennox comes along too. And keep this in mind, if you're ever asked, if I ask you, if I want to ask, who discovers Duncan's body? It's going to be Macduff. Because they get to the room, and while they're on the way walking out, Macduff says, I know this is a joyful trouble to you, but yet 'tis one. He's like, I'm sorry, this is an inconvenience. And Macbeth says, the labor we delight in physics pain, this is the door. So he leads him to the door, and Macduff says, I'll make so bold to call. So he goes into the king's chambers, okay? That leaves Macbeth out here to have a very nervous and awkward conversation while he waits for Macbeth to find the dead king. Now, it's not like a little bedroom or even a little motel room where he opens the door and he sees him. It's a whole suite of rooms. So when he walks in, he doesn't see anything right away. The first thing he probably will see are the guards laying on the floor, drunk, okay? And it's going to take him a couple of minutes. That's why this conversation is going on out here, okay? Lennox says, goes the king hence today? He does. He did appoint so. It's kind of funny. He's like, yeah, he's leaving. And he's like, well, he had planned on it. The night had been unruly. Where we lay, our chimneys were blown down. And as they say, lamentings heard in the air, strange screams of death. And prophesying with accents terrible of dire combustion and confused events, new hatched to the woeful time, the obscure bird clamored the livelong night. Some say the earth was feverish and did shake. Lennox was just talking about a very rough night as far as the weather goes. You got to remember, they don't know what happened to the king. There's a very important idea that comes out with this, and it is the belief of this, that unnatural actions by man are reflected in unnatural things in nature. Okay? It was a very unnatural thing for a Thane to kill his king. Now, Lennox doesn't know this. He's not saying that because he knows what happened. He's just saying it was really bad. He actually mentions an earthquake. Okay? That was the earth did shake. And Macbeth's only response was, "'Twas a rough night. My young remembrance cannot parallel fell to it." He's like, I don't remember a worse night in my whole life. We then hear Macduff screaming from the other room. Oh, horror, horror. He comes running out. Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee. Both Macbeth and Lennox say, what's the matter? Confusion now hath made his masterpiece. Most sacrilegious murder hath broke open the Lord's anointed temple and stole thence the life of the building. Macbeth says, what is it you say the life? Lennox says, mean you his majesty? And Macduff says, approach the chamber and destroy your sight with a new Gorgon. Do not bid me speak. See, then speak yourselves. What he said was, you go look, and that's what happens. Macbeth and Lennox go into the room. Macbeth has to act like this is the first time he's seeing it, and he's got Lennox with him. And so Macduff's out there, and he starts screaming, awake, awake, ring the alarm bell, murder and treason, Banquo and Donalbain, Malcolm awake, shake off this downy sleep, death's counterfeit, and look on death itself, up, and see the great doom's image. Malcolm, Banquo, as from your graves, rise up and walk like sprites. To countenance this horror, ring the bell. And then there's this bell, like a servant got up and went up to the towers ringing the bell. Who strolls in, like in her, again, her robe, and she's like, what's the business that such a hideous trumpet calls to parley the sleepers of the house? Speak, speak. And Macbeth has a very ironic line. He says, O gentle lady, 'tis not for you to hear what I can speak. The repetition in a woman's ear would murder as it fell. So she asks what's going on, and he's like, I can't say this to a woman, to a lady. The irony is that she planned the whole thing, and this never would have happened without her, okay? Banquo comes in. Exactly. Banquo comes in. You could see how angry he looks, but he doesn't even know yet. And Macduff says to him, oh, Banquo, Banquo, our royal master's murdered. And so that's the first lady Macbeth hears. And she says, whoa, alas, what, in our house? Which is an odd thing. She's just told the king is dead. And she's like, oh my goodness, in our house? And Banquo says, too cruel anywhere. Dear Duff, I prithee contradict thyself. Say it is not so. Now, Macbeth comes back out. And he says, wait, wrong guy, sorry. That's Macduff. Had I but died an hour before this chance, I had lived a blessed time. For from this instant, there's nothing serious in mortality. All is but toys. Renown and grace is dead. The wine of life is drawn, and the mere lees is left this vault to brag of. Now, the characters that played the witches are gonna have to pull double duty here. There's just two of them though. This is gonna be Malcolm and Donalbain coming in. This scene has more people in it than most. Okay. They're woking. Remember, these are the king's sons. Okay. So they come in. And Donalbain says, what is amiss? Macbeth answers him, you are and do not know it. The spring, the head, the fountain of your blood is stopped. The very source of it is stopped. And Macduff actually translates and says, your royal father's murdered. Ever since the murder, what you will notice is Macbeth gets wordier and wordier. He talks much more than he needs to, much more than he should. And sometimes he's so confusing that people, after he speaks, are like, what? And that's why Macduff kind of like translated, like, your father's dead. That's what he's trying to tell you. And Malcolm says, oh, by whom? And listen to Lennox gives this answer. Those of his chamber, as it seemed, had done it. You know what he said? When he asked who killed them, Lennox said, it looks like the guards did it. So at this point is when I often ask, so far, how is Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's plan going? And it's like, perfectly. The king's dead, and other people think that the guards did it, okay? And he explains, their hands and faces were all badged with blood. So were their daggers, which unwiped we found upon their pillows. They stared and were distracted. No man's life was to be trusted with them. Listen to what Macbeth says here, one of the most startling lines of the play. Oh, yet I do repent me of my fury that I did kill them. Okay? I want to make sure you're clear on this. Macbeth went in there with Lennox, and to play this out, when he saw the king dead, he took out his sword and he killed the guards. These sleeping drunk guards that were there. Okay? Macbeth is starting to deviate from Lady Macbeth's plans. He's going off on his own. He's going rogue. He's getting much more violent and irrational. Okay? Just keep in mind, whenever I give that line to students, like, what did he say? Oh, he said he killed the king. Like, no. He never, ever admits to killing the king. He said he killed the guards. Okay? Macduff, wherefore did you so? Which is, why did you do that? This now starts to add to Macduff's dislike and suspicion of Macbeth. It's like, he's like, why did you do that? I mean, what's kind of implied is we would have questioned them, talked to them, and we're going to talk about this. And Macbeth answers, who can be wise, amazed, temperate, and furious, loyal and neutral in a moment? No man. The expedition of my violent love outrun the pause of reason. Here lay Duncan, his silver skin laced with his golden blood, and his gashed stabs looked like breach in nature. For a ruined, wasteful entrance, there the murderers, steeped in the colors of their trade, their daggers unmannerly breached with gore. Who could refrain that had a heart to love, and in that heart, courage to make loves known? Again, look how much he said. All he needs to say was like, I don't know, I was so upset. But he goes on this long speech. Lady Macbeth now faints. Help me, ho. And Macduff says, look to the lady, and they run over to help her. What's not clear is, does she realize how out of control he's gotten? And everyone is staring at him, and she faints to get the attention off of him? Or is she just outright and legitimately, genuinely fainted, and because of all that's going on? Okay? Now, what is that? So everyone runs over to her. Oh, good. She's laying down already. And that leaves Malcolm and Donalbain. And this is as an aside. Malcolm says, why do we hold our tongues that most may claim this argument for hours? And Donalbain says, what should be spoken here when our fate, hid in an auger hole, may rush and seize us? Let's away. That's as in run away. We'd better run away. Think about this. This is the heir to the throne. And this is his younger brother. They were not involved in the murder of the king. They knew nothing about it. If he's the heir and the king is killed and he wasn't involved in the murder, he's like, whoever did this, they're going to come after me. And he's like, and if you go, then it's me. I'm next. He goes, we're getting out of here. What's that going to look like? The king's going to be dead. They think the guards actually did it, and the two sons have run away. They're going to look guilty. All right? It seems like by pure chance, but it couldn't be working out better for Macbeth. Okay? Malcolm says, nor our strong sorrow upon the foot of motion. Banquo is still talking. He says, look to the lady. And then he says, I forgot which one was Banquo. I think it was him. And when we have our naked frailties hid, that suffer an exposure, let us meet and question this most bloody piece of work to know it further. Fears and scruples shake us. In the great hand of God I stand, and thence against the undivided pretense I fight of treasonous malice. They know it's treason. It was an inside job. It was inside one of his Thane's castles. Okay, so he's like, he literally says we have to go take off our sleeping clothes, our pajamas, get ready, and we're going to come back and discuss this. Okay? And Macduff says, so do I, and they all say, so all. All right? And Macbeth adds, let's briefly put on manly readiness and meet in the hall together. And they all say, well contented. Everybody leaves. These two are still here. Malcolm says, what will you do? Let's not consort with them. To show an unfelt sorrow is an office which the false man does easy. All to England. Malcolm is running away to England. He's like, we don't know who did this. Somebody that could do this, obviously has a murderous demeanor. We're not going to be able to tell. And Donalbain says, to Ireland I. So they're running away. They're going to separate countries to be safer, that they're not together. Our separated fortune shall keep us both the safer. Where we are, there's daggers in men's smiles. The near in blood, the nearer bloody. Malcolm finishes the scene saying, this murderous shaft, that shot, hath not yet lighted, and our safest way is to avoid the aim. Therefore to horse, and let us not be dainty of leave-taking, but shift away. There's warrant in that theft, which steals itself when there's no mercy left. And that ends the scene. So the key things here, obviously the king's dead, we know that. It looked like the guards did it, and now they're dead. And Malcolm and Donalbain are running away, and it's going to look very suspicious on them. All right? This was a long one. When we get to the next scene, I'm going to talk a little bit about Macbeth killing the guards, but that's it for right now. When you watch this, guys, post a comment for participation credit. Okay, take care.